The views are out of this world.
This thing is unbelievable. It sounds incredible.
Golly gee, everybody, look at that.
Bonnie Doon has always been known as the gateway to the Victorian High Country, and that is one of my favourite parts of Australia. But I suspect that a lot of you watching probably don't know that it is the gateway to the Victorian High Country. You might in fact know that it's famous because of the house that's right behind me. That's right, it's the house from the castle. It is here in Bonnie Doon. It is on the shores of Lake Eildon, which is just over there, and it's our starting point for a drive that I've really been looking forward to. This is a fantastic part of Australia. There's a lot to see, there's a lot to do. It's a part of Australia that Victorians know really well, but most of you who live in other states might not be as familiar with it. There's some great towns to visit as well, places like Omeo, Myrtleford, and we're going to go into Bright as well. That's where we're going to end our road trip this week. I'll tell you one thing, I'm not the biggest fan of the movie The Castle, but one thing they did get right is how's the Serenity. It's absolutely beautiful here in Bonnie Doon. It is our starting point. I'm looking forward to this week's drive. Let's get into it. But in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. Doesn't get any more adventurous for a vehicle, for a drive like this, than a vehicle that has adventure in its tagline. And that's what Subaru's been telling everybody is a core part of its DNA for years, all for adventure, with the emphasis on the 4 being all-wheel drive. This week, we've got a Subaru Outback for our drive. Looking forward to hitting the open road with it. And remember, this is classified as a large SUV, so it's got plenty of room in it for the family, plenty of room for the mountain bike that we've got hitched to the back of it as well. You'll understand why that's there a little bit later in the episode. But don't forget, Subaru's synonymous for its all-wheel drive drivetrain, and as such, they make a lot of sense for adventurous families, adventurous people who want to get out and have adventures in the great open country that we live in. That's exactly what we're going to do this week with the Subaru Outback. Subaru's Outback has been updated for 2023 with a turbocharged engine and tech changes, along with a revised pricing structure. The range is priced from $42,690 before on-road costs, and the new 2.4 litre XT turbo engine generates 183 kilowatts and 350 newton metres. The turbocharged engine is mated to a constantly variable transmission and makes approximately 50 kilowatts and 100 newton metres more than the non-turbo engine.
It's sitting by the overcoat, the second shelf, the notes she wrote that I can't bring myself to throw away.
One of the mistakes Aussies make about this part of Australia, and I think even some Victorians do, is that you only come to this area, you come to the foot of the mountains, the high country, whatever you want to call it, the gateway to the high country where we are now, in winter. And I think that's a really easy mistake to make, because a lot of people talk about the snowfields and that it's beautiful at this time of year, and the colder it gets, the more interesting it is. But there's a lot to do out here regardless. The towns have that same vibrant feeling to them no matter what time of year it is. The ski fields are just as beautiful in summer, even when there's no snow on them. And of course, then you can do other activities, whether it's fishing, camping, hiking, mountain biking, all that kind of stuff is a lot easier to do at this time of year, when it's not as cold and when there's no snow on the ground.
I'm at a party I don't wanna be at, and I don't ever wear a suit and tie at. Wondering if I can sneak out the back. Nobody's even looking me in my eyes. Can you take my hand, finish my drink, say shall we dance? Hell yeah. You know I love you, did I ever tell you? You make it better like that.
We talk a lot at Drive about Toyota and the brand perception of Toyota and how Australians in the outback and country regions feel about Toyota. But let me tell you, there's another brand that is held in equally high regard in these areas, and it's this one, it's Subaru. From the moment farmers in regional areas were able to get their hands on a Subaru Brumby, there has been a proliferation of them out in country areas. There are whole parts of rural New South Wales, rural Queensland, Victoria, a whole state like Tasmania where they are in love with the Subaru brand. You see Brumbies, Leonis, in all of these rural properties, there's usually one on every farm, and there's a reason that people out in the country love them as much as they do. They're reliable, they're robust, they're pretty cost effective, they're cheap to keep running well, and if they get a vehicle that does exactly what they want it to do, they will keep going back. So when you're driving a Subaru out here, you feel very much at home. It's got a little bit to do with the all-wheel drive system and the sure-footedness on the road, but it's got a lot to do with that brand equity that Subaru has built up in Australia over decades. Obviously, the headline act of the new Subaru Outback XT is the fact that this is now a turbocharged model. So you get a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, CVT, constantly variable transmission. We haven't always loved them, but Subaru is doing a better job, I guess, than most at tuning them so that they don't have any of those annoying tendencies that we didn't like about CVTs. Because without getting too technical, they are very different to a conventional automatic transmission. But it's worth saying that in this platform, Subaru has done a really good job of tuning the CVT to work well with the turbo engine and provide a really enjoyable drive. In terms of power and torque, you've got 183 kilowatts and 350 newton meters. That's more than enough, and that's why there was so much focus on this turbocharged engine, because people wanted to know, would it be powerful enough? Would it make enough torque? Would that translate to easy cruising out on the open road? And it does. On that note, Subaru claims 9 litres per 100 kilometres on the combined cycle. Out here on the freeway, on the highway, out on country roads like we're driving at the moment, you will get better than that. It'll drop down into the low 7s per 100 kilometres, which is really good. However, the counter argument to that is that around town it's going to be a little bit thirstier, so probably 10 to 11.5 litres per 100, depending on how you drive and how bad the traffic is. But all in all, this drivetrain in this particular body style makes a whole lot of sense when you get out here on the open road. If you've driven through this area and you've wondered what these strange little buildings behind me are that look like tin sheds, well, you're exactly the same as us. And the reason for their existence hits home for me, actually, because before my grandmother emigrated to Australia from Italy, she worked in a tobacco factory. And that's exactly what these tin sheds are. There were a lot of Italian immigrants that moved to this area, to Bright and Myrtleford specifically, and they grew and cultivated tobacco leaves, and that's exactly what these little sheds are for. Now though, the region is much more well known for growing hops, which is of interest to you if you enjoy drinking beer. One of the reasons the Subaru Outback is perfect for this kind of drive that we're doing this week is exactly the kind of surface I'm driving on right now. You can't see because it's underneath us, but we're driving on a dirt road. Now, it is a pretty manicured, well-drained dirt road, and even though it's raining, it's not slippery. It's just your regular country dirt or gravel road that's pretty well looked after. However, when you're in a vehicle like a Subaru Outback, you do not have to worry about that at all. You just fire onto any dirt road in pretty much any part of the country, and you're not going to have an issue because Subaru's all-wheel drive system works particularly well. Now, we've said before that the Outback makes a lot of sense because it's a large SUV, it's got plenty of room, but one of the factors that's worth noting, especially when you're on a dirt road like this one, is the quality of the ride. The bump absorption is excellent and it stays comfortable, it's practical, and it's really useful if you want to do any exploring in this country on some dirt roads. Welcome to Myrtleford, one of the must-stop towns on this part of the drive. It's one of my favourite towns in country Victoria. It's a really pretty little town regardless of what time of the year that you're here. As you can see today, it's not the nicest day here. It's a little bit cold, a little bit misty and a little bit rainy, but the moody feel that you get of the fog and the clouds rolling across the hills is beautiful here. It's really worth coming here regardless of what time of year it is. There's a lot of history about Myrtleford as well. It's one of the really important towns in this region, and of course the road that goes straight through the middle of the town is part of the Great Alpine Way, which truly is one of Australia's great driving roads. It's one of the reasons we're back here visiting this area again. It's a beautiful drive. This is a fantastic town. A couple of great places to stop and eat, a fantastic bakery as well, and it's exactly what we're going to do right now. Centrally positioned, Myrtleford is 280 kilometres northeast of Melbourne and 46 kilometres southeast of Wangaratta. The population sits around 3,200 people, and when the town was first settled in the mid-1800s, the post office opened as Myrtle Creek before being renamed to Myrtleford. The road that runs through the town was called Buckland Road back in the day, but is now called the Great Alpine Road and is part of one of our country's most iconic drives. The rich soil of the region means Myrtleford is well known for its local produce, especially vineyards, as well as some beautiful parks. One of the interesting things that Subaru has to work with whenever they release a new vehicle is the dual expectation of buyers, especially in places like Australia. So you buy a Subaru, you expect some level of sporty ride and handling because it's an all-wheel drive, and there's an element of performance that's always in the DNA. However, a vehicle like the Outback has to be able to head, not just in the name, but out into the Outback, certainly out into country areas, and be capable of dealing with the road surfaces. As we know, if you spend any time out here, and we spend a lot, these roads are pretty bad. They can range from not too bad or average to really, really bad, especially if they've had a lot of rain. I think the Outback does a particularly good job of soaking up the bigger bumps. So the really big dips in the road, big washouts, things like that, it does a really good job. It just tackles them and then settles really quickly. You do notice if there's a lot of high frequency bumps, you will feel that through the seat when you're driving or if you're a passenger. It is comfortable though. I do think it's worth saying, with a vehicle like this, if you're going to do this kind of touring and you're looking at buying one new, this might sound funny because Australians tend to go the opposite way, but get the smallest wheels and the biggest tyres you can get, not the biggest wheels with the smallest tyres, because it will make a big difference when you're out here on the open road.
Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Where you gonna run to? All on that day, will I run to the rock?
We do talk a lot about coming to this part of Australia in winter because it is obviously beautiful here and it's a winter wonderland. If you like skiing and snowboarding, this is the place to be. However, if you're visiting in late autumn like we are before the first official snow weekend, it is a stunning place to be. The trees are beautiful, the parkland is beautiful, the farms are looking their best. It's a really, really good time of year to visit. It's very picturesque. And it's worth coming here even if you're not into those winter sports, because if you get here before the dead of winter, it's not going to be quite as busy and it's going to be a lot easier to get around. So make sure, if you've always wanted to come to this part of Australia, it doesn't matter if you're not into skiing and snowboarding, get out here in late autumn like we are, you will not regret it.
It was bleeding all on that day.
Still a little bit misty and grey outside, but that's not a problem because it's still beautiful out here regardless what the weather's like. And now we're making our way over to Bright. It's one of my favourite towns in this part of Victoria. People who are familiar with it will know one of the biggest custom car and hot rod shows goes through Bright every year. It's an amazing weekend. If you're into old classic cars, it's well worth being out there at that time of year. That's not on at the moment, of course, but We're going to check Bright out. There's some amazing places to eat, really good motels and places to stay. We'll be spending the night in Bright, and we've got a few things in store tomorrow as we wrap up our road trip across the foot of the Victorian High Country.
Spend more than 10 minutes in this region and you'll know that it's a haven for two-wheeled pursuits, whether you're into motorcycling, road riding or mountain biking. Today, we're going to speak to a local expert who will show us how to explore the local parks with a little dash of adrenaline on a mountain bike.
So Andrew, tell us a little bit about the facility first of all and where you can ride, because just having rolled in here now, yeah, spectacular part of the world, right? You don't need to tell you that, you live here, but this looks like the most amazing place to go mountain biking.
Yeah, we've got the mountain bike park, which is set up in a forestry plantation, which gives us great flexibility. Our land leaseholders are very accommodating, so the company involved wants us to enjoy the space to recreate, and that involves hang gliding, trail running, mushrooming, and of course mountain biking. Okay. So the mountain bike trails is about 70 odd Ks worth of trails here and about 82 odd trails, and we've got about 460 odd metres of vertical. So that caters for riders from your beginners to your intermediates to your advanced super downhill riders. So we are the premier cycling destination in Australia, we're told by our local tourism authority, and a lot of the things are available to all forms of cycling. So we've got the Alpine Peaks for the road cyclists. We've also got the rail trail, which now extends from Harriettville all the way to Wangaratta, and that's super popular because in Bright, 6 Ks up there, you've got Wandy, you've got the pub up there, you've got other places to eat and have a look at things. There's old historic ruins, and then downstream another 6 Ks, you've got Paulpunka, you've got a beach, you've got Rail Trail Cafe and the pub, and it's great for families. We just want people to have a great time and be better cyclists and have fun, and that's what it's all about.
On that subject, setting the agenda, let's set a real easy agenda now for someone who hasn't ridden a mountain bike for about 20 odd years. We're going to go and do a little bit of exploring.
You'll think you're looking at Aquaman. I summon fish to the dish, although I like the chalet Swiss, I like the sushi, cause I never touch a frying pan. Hot like wasabi when I bust rhymes, big like Leanne rhymes, because I'm all about value. Bert Camper's got the mad hits, you try to match wits, you try to hold me but I bust through. Gonna make a break and take a bake out like a stinking egg and shake out like vanilla, it's the finest of the flavors. Gonna see the show cause then you'll know the vertigo is gonna go, cause it's so dangerous you'll have to sign a waiver. Can't I help it if I think you're funny when you're mad? Trying hard not to smile though I feel bad. I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral. Can't understand what I mean, well you soon will. I have a tendency to wear my mind on my sleeve. I have a history of taking off my shirt. It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Threw your arms in the air and said you're crazy. 5 days since you tackled me. I still got the red burns on both my knees.
If you're thinking this is a little bit like hard work, you'd be right, especially if you haven't done it for as long as I have, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. So get out here and do it. You will absolutely love it. This week we finish our drive here in Bright, and what a picturesque little town this is. Unsurprisingly, the Victorian gold rush found its way here, probably largely due to that river you can see behind me. And on that subject, there are some amazing river walks that you can do while you're here in Bright. Really easy to access, and anybody can do them no matter what your fitness level is. This town did start pretty much as a result of the gold rush, but it's really grown into something of a winter sports playground, I suppose you could call it. And don't forget, as I said, if you're into old school cars, one of the best hot rod shows in Australia comes through here every year. We do love Bright. We recommend that you come here, and because it's not that far from Sydney by car, it's a place that not only Victorians should be visiting. Don't forget, everything that you've seen this episode on Drive is over at drive.com.au, and we'll see you again next week for another great drive.
Coming down the day.
This week's drive took us from the Castle Holiday House in Bonnie Doon over to Bright at the foot of the Victorian High Country. take the B320 Maroondah Highway to Mansfield, then the Mansfield-Whitfield Road up to Tolmi. Then turn onto Boggy Creek Road and pass through Moyhu on the way to Myrtleford. From there, it's an easy run down the B500 Great Alpine Road into Bright. Next week, I head out of Melbourne in a new Suzuki Jimny, but it's not just any Jimny. This one has been modified so it looks more like it's ready to tackle the Dakar Rally.